You're listening to CAAT Tales, the podcast of SLC Faculty Local 417, your union connection. Each episode, we bring you real stories from our members, practical tips on your rights, and the kind of information that helps us all move forward.
Welcome to a special edition of CAAT Tales. I'm your host, Julie White. On today's show, we're focusing in on our union activism. We're providing a follow-up to the recent OPSEU SEFPO Regionals, where we joined our Eastern Region comrades, known as Region 4, to elect leaders and committee representatives who are going to help shape the next 3 years of our work. And the colleges were there in force. Later in this episode, we're going to check in with Tracy Henderson, Algonquin College's CAAT A president. You may recognize her voice from the news, and she's going to share with us some of the very real issues facing Algonquin College staff today. We're also going to catch up with one of our recent grads, who is a delegate at regionals, representing Addictions and Mental Health Services KFL&A. We'll wrap up with Communications Officer Christina Chrysler, who's going to help us look ahead to what to expect from the OPSEU convention, which starts on April 9th. But first, let's get started with Gillian Axten and Tabatha Rutledge, who are going to talk about the provincial roles that they've been elected into on behalf of Region 4. Let's start with you, Gillian. You are returning to the Constitution Committee. What type of work happens there? How long have you been doing it, and why are you doing this?
So I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. There's no other ways about it. I'm a nerd. Think that especially policies within the Constitution specifically, because that's our guiding principles of big OPSEU, not little local OPSEU, but big OPSEU, are incredibly important. And what we write in there really gives us our marching orders for how we govern big OPSEU, regional OPSEU, local OPSEU, and then down to the member. So I wanted to be involved in that. And my best way of understanding something as complex as big OPSEU is to actually immerse myself into a position. It forces me to learn. So I got elected to the Constitution Committee last year. And what we do is we meet for about 4 or 5 days before convention. We review all the constitutional amendments. We then look and see how it would change the Constitution. We parse the language. That's not my deal. I don't do commas and capitals. Lord save me. And then we debate, argue, and discuss whether or not we should recommend to membership the acceptance of this and understanding the ramifications of changing or not changing the Constitution. And that's really the part that's the nerdy policy person. I really am interested in that kind of change and the ramifications that it would have for any member walking around any day in any sector. So that's where I got involved. So we met for 4 days this year. Day 1 was a review of all the amendments. Day 2, we actually debated, discussed, and looked at how that would change the Constitution. Day 3, we parsed the language. I sat in the corner and drooled. And then day 4, we cleaned everything up and made our recommendations to what hits the convention floor first. There were 26 constitutional amendments. We combined a whole bunch of them because they were similar or identical. And we know with election, we're only going to have time for 2, 3, that kind of thing.
So this really is how OPSEU as a whole stays current with the time, so that the Constitution is flexing with, the needs of the day.
Exactly. But it's a real strict governing document. So the changes have to be voted in with 2/3 of membership. So it's very hard to get a constitutional amendment in.
Are there any kind of highlights that you're able to talk about right now?
Yeah. So out in public, we know that there are several amendments dealing with strikebreakers, specifically out of the CAAT strike. So we had 3 or 4 constitutional amendments with that. That is going to continue to be a big issue amongst large OPSEU and locals, and it's really impactful in how we bargain. So there was a lot of debate and discussion about how far do we go and what kind of language do we use within the Constitution, including the word scab. Is that appropriate to be in the Constitution? And what are the ramifications for scamming?
So these are going to be some of the conversations that we're having on the floor when it comes to Constitution. Okay.
Yeah.
So bring the popcorn because the debate is going to be hot and heavy.
Absolutely, especially with that one.
Tabatha, you were elected as the Region 4 alternate for the Hardship Committee. OPSEU represents kind of a very wide swath of different divisions, and the Hardship Committee is one that I know is near and dear to your heart. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. I'm a nurse at my core. I care about people. I care about the members. Volunteered my time to help and participated in other rallies for other divisions. LBED with LCBO and their amazing political action and campaigning for getting their contract, as well as when the support staff were on their lines. I tried to aid in any type of knowledge sharing from our 2017 strike for their preparation, getting them up and running. But I did see in 2017 how members that were on strike or when we weren't on strike have had hardships, and they were in dire, had some financial dire straits. And I don't want our members to suffer in silence. I want them to know that they're supported and that there are funds that head OPSEU finds in their budget. It's a budget line. It's important and goes down to the regional area. So Region 4 is our area that's like from Loyalist all the way to the Quebec border and Ottawa. If a member comes forward, it's a form, it's a process, like Gillian said, and then the committee will then review it and make sure that they meet the criteria. It's not like you have to show like financial documents. I don't believe the whole idea is there a need, and it's being dispersed equitably. And I think what I was told was it was about $2,000 that could be in aid of someone in financial need. But everyone needs a helping hand once in a while. Like I know I've needed help, and my friends and family, and sometimes it's just support that helps them get over that hump, and you see them bloom after that. So there was a call that it's a fairly large committee. To have 4 people on the committee and have 8 alternates is quite a large committee compared to any of the other committees that were going. And I was very proud that Carla, our treasurer, acting treasurer right now, was on it and helped create bylaws in the past round. She was elected previously in the past term, and I'm hoping to aid if needed. Because of things that happen with layoffs, illness, changes of position, this fund committee, the Hardship Fund Committee, may have people that have to step down for various reasons. And last time they did go through most of their alternates to ensure the committee was functioning. So I was asked and I said, okay, I can do that. I don't mind participating. So near and dear to my heart, you're absolutely correct.
And accountability is one of those really important things that are part of this committee, making sure, because these are members' funds that are put into a pot to be used to help with major hardships that our members are facing. So accountability is certainly a big piece of this committee work, right?
Absolutely. That's why the bylaws that they put in the last term that Carla spearheaded, and we were so proud of, because with her background being our treasurer in the past and acting as well now, she's very proficient in helping set up bylaws, showing the process, being accountable where the money's going, is ultimately at the bedrock of what OPSEU is about. Help people, but in a process that's transparent.
And Gillian, you stepped up as well as the alternate for the Francophone committee.
I don't think I'll be called up. Eric is well ensconced in Francophone. I'm a Montrealer, born and bred, grew up bilingual. Still, I have one child who lives his life in French, and my granddaughter lives her life in French. My other son's moved to Nova Scotia and pretty Anglo now. So I'm happy to help out with the Francophone committee, and I'm always involved with the Francophone community in the region. So I just put my name in the hat just in case Eric needs help.
All right. And to either of you, how important is it that we're lending expertise in some of these broader OPSEU areas and with the larger labor movement?
I think that we're very blessed to have the resources and the talents that we have in our local. So wherever we can help our union siblings, not everyone has the offload that we have been able to supply to our members to support them. So a lot of the things, not just on the committees, but also the resources. I was in a workload monitoring group Provincial meeting yesterday and talking about resources, and the chat was a flurry of we're all sharing. So we're not reinventing the wheel. So, why not put our hand out there and help others? And I think that's at really the core of everyone on our LAC. And so this was just an extension of that. So I'm proud that Local 417 is stepping up in a variety of places provincially.
Those offloads certainly are a testament to the strength of the bargaining that's happened, that we've been able to do in the past, and to our sectors. Kudos to those who have gone before us. Gillian, what about you? Why is this work important to you? And I know you've been doing kind of the provincial stuff for quite a number of years.
Yeah, so the 2 committees that I got elected to regionally are only 2 of the 4 things that I'm actually on. So I'm co-chair of the Joint Grievance Scheduling Committee. I won't run again for that because it's a 4-year term, and I want new people to come and step up and take on that role. That involves scheduling all of our grievances to go to arbitration for both CAAT A and CAAT S. I lovingly call it competitive Sudoku on speed, because we literally meet in a room, we make a plan, and then we meet with the employer and they have a plan, and then we try to play strategically to get what we want or avoiding what they want, depending on what the case scenario is. It's a very fast and oddly complicated, if you like board games, and strategy, this is definitely the kind of committee you like. I'm a board game nerd. I love it. So it's been actually one of my favorite committees, and not my longest standing. My longest standing has been the Disability Rights Caucus. So I've been on that for 10 years as of this spring. And it's absolutely near and dear to my heart. I'm a screen reader user. I have ADHD. I have dyslexia. I have dysgraphia. I am neurodivergent. I have all sorts of stuff going on that most people don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis until you see it. And then you wonder, it seems odd. So often faculty will have to be delayed while I reread their emails or re-listen to their emails. And so I've been really advocating my entire life for people with disabilities. And so the Disability Rights Caucus is absolutely like my passion. They can drive me around the bend, as any committee work can, but really important work, especially outside of CAAT, where the vast majority of members don't have a background in disability rights or in accommodations or in that sort of world. As faculty members, we are all used to doing accommodations. We do them on a daily basis. But if you work for the LCBO, AODA may be a new word for you. So that's something that I'll continue that as long as I possibly can.
Excellent. And again, that speaks to the privilege that we have kind of coming into the union from the CAAT academic and the CAAT support sides too, because we do speak a lot of that language, and we have a greater opportunity for education and understanding. That was Gillian Axten and Tabatha Rutledge, both officers on the 417 Local Executive Committee. Our next guest highlights the importance of the work of faculty, not just from an educational perspective, but also a labor one. I had the absolute delight of looking up from the breakfast table on the morning of regionals and seeing a very familiar smile walking my way. Our next guest, Arya Raju, came to us as an international student, graduated from the Healthcare Administration program, and within a year found herself as a delegate at the OPSEU Regionals, something neither of us would have predicted. Welcome to the podcast, Arya.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your background and your connection with St. Lawrence College, first of all?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. So I joined St. Lawrence College, as you know, to pursue healthcare admin. My background is in dentistry. I did my undergrad back in India. While I was doing internship, I kind of knew that, as much as I love the clinical part, I knew that's not something that I want to do moving forward, just as a career option. So I started looking into other options, basically pathways that I can still stay in healthcare, but get into a little more administrative positions, more so to be on the behind the scenes. So that's when I did my research. I was deciding between Canada and UK and eventually decided to come to Canada. And that's how I ended up at St. Lawrence. It was a wonderful 2-year program. Being at St. Lawrence, it made me grow into the person that I am today. It opened a lot of opportunities. It changed the way how how I think. And it also fueled my mentality of I'll do it, I'll say yes and figure it out later. So that's how I ended up St. Lawrence. And then in Ottawa, when I was that was my first regional OPSEU meeting. And I just started being a part of the union. And it was wonderful to be part of such a big event immediately after just it being involved with the unions.
Yeah, and you were always somebody as a student. I remember you as being the person who would step up and get involved with pretty much anything that needed to be done or any opportunities. You were certainly seeking them out. So it's really exciting for me to see that you're involved with OPSEU at AMHS. So you're working at Addictions Mental Health Services now. You're based in Napanee?
Yes, I work at the Napanee office. I work as the program support assistant. I basically the administrative person for the office and more over a bridge between our senior leadership team and our frontline staff. So it's a vast role.
And you mentioned that this is kind of your first time being involved in a union.
Yes, it is. So our chief steward is based out of Napanee. So she works at the Napanee office. So she's the one who actually kind of got me into the union. And to be fair, coming from India, the union background back home is a lot more different than the union over here. So I must say that I was prejudiced about the union, about how it works, more specifically because I didn't know what a union can do, the impact that it has for the workers involved. But our chief steward kind of subtly got me into the workings of the union because I used to ask a lot of questions. So through those conversations is when I realized that the thoughts that I had about union is so different. And that's not the case at all. So that's how I actually got into it. And coming to the regional meeting, it actually changed a lot of my perspective. It motivated me and inspired me, to be honest, to be more involved at a local level and then eventually try to be more involved at a provincial level as well.
Excellent. So we've got leadership. We always knew you were a leader, Arya, and seeing your leadership and the fact that you're interested in stepping up. And certainly, there's some activities and OPSEU has a great kind of young workers group as well for those that are under 35 and the kind of the inclusion and diversity kind of within the union as well. Was there anything that really surprised you when you were kind of in the room in Ottawa?
I absolutely loved how welcoming the space was because I was lost because I didn't know anyone. And to be honest, I didn't even know my delegate as well because even though we work in the same organization, we work in two different sites. And there's always that disconnect where we know everyone virtually, like we know their names, but we don't know how they look. So I was a little bit scared walking into that room, but I absolutely loved how everyone was just so welcoming. They just knew that you're lost by looking at your face, and they're like, you know what, it's fine. Just walk in, have a seat at this table. So that's something that surprised me. I did not realize that it's going to be so much inclusive. So I think that's the biggest thing that kind of surprised me, and I think I liked that a lot, especially being a person coming from another country and is still pretty a newbie because it's just been 3 years since I've been in Canada. So yeah.
Do you have any advice for perhaps newcomers or early career folks like yourself?
I certainly do because I just wanted to circle back to the point that I said earlier about the thoughts that I had. So coming from India, I can only speak to India, but I feel like that's probably true in most of the Asian and South Asian countries, because we do have this notion where you get reprimanded for speaking up, especially if it's against your employers, or even if it's you're just fighting for what's rational and logical and something that's your right. You usually get reprimanded. Back home, you get reprimanded in the form of being passed over for a promotion or not being taken seriously. So that's something that I have grown up seeing a lot, hearing a lot, stories from my parents, colleagues, family, friends. So, and I think that's the case for most of the immigrants, especially young workers in our country. So having that the thought usually is one of the main resistance or factors that we see when it comes to engagement with young workers being involved in the union, and then just kind of like stepping up, having those conversations with the employers. And that's something that I've seen firsthand among my friends as well, who work in different other organizations, and even if it's said in the collective agreement. So, and I don't blame them at all, because I was that person too until I started having that conversations with my chief steward. I would say that's my biggest advice to all of the young workers who's in my position, just starting out in a workforce and being part of a union. I feel like they need to be a little more aware, talk to their stewards, read the collective agreement, even though the language is so confusing and complex. Taking the time to, read it, or at least ask questions about what's your right, what's your benefits, and then just being aware. Even if you're not like an activist right away, just knowing that, okay, you're entitled to so and so and so, and then anything that's out of scope, you should probably, look into it. So I think that's my biggest advice to myself and to my friends out there too.
I love this. And obviously, kind of as I was one of your faculty members, I taught you about careers. We did not have big conversations about unionization. And I'm seeing a gap here. But were you surprised kind of seeing your faculty from the college at the table?
Of course. I was surprised that there was a union at the college to start with. So I was like, okay, so there is a union. And yeah, I was definitely surprised.
We're seeing kind of the influx of new people coming into
Yes.
the union, and the colleges now actually are wall to wall OPSEU members. So our support staff, both part-time and full-time, and then our faculty full-time and partial load, and now part-time and sessional as well. So I now get to look at you, Arya, and you are a sibling. You're a comrade within the union. So absolutely excited to be able to see you there and to hear the excitement and kind of to experience what that collectivism looks like through your eyes. And this is what building solidarity is all about. That was Arya, a reminder that leadership doesn't wait for permission. It grows from experience, from community, and from the courage to step into spaces that weren't always built with you in mind. And speaking of courage, our next segment takes us to Algonquin College, where members are fighting back with everything they've got. Algonquin College is facing some of the most significant challenges in the sector: layoffs, instability, and a fight to protect quality education. And through it all, Local 415 President Tracy Henderson's been a powerful voice. On March 21st, she was elected as an alternate to OPSEU SEFPO's executive board. Algonquin Support Staff President Veronica Attard was also re-elected to the board and will serve as the alternate VP for Region 4. We can rest assured that there are strong voices from our region's colleges at the provincial table. Welcome to CAAT Tales, Tracy.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that.
All right. So let's just jump right into it. What is the current state of things over at Algonquin?
That's a great question, Julie. We can do some visualization together. Let's picture, a street flooded and a dumpster rolling down the street, but the dumpster is on fire. And you have a team of people that continue to throw gasoline and flammable items at the dumpster as it rolls through the flooded streets. I'm making light, because sometimes you just have to laugh. But joking aside, I can tell you that I never for one moment, certainly not as a faculty, even as an activist, ever thought that I would see this happen. I do not recognize my employer.
And what's the situation in terms of program closures? I know you just had more announced.
So, there's so many aspects of that. So as you know, Algonquin to date refuses to release the efficiency audit. And I understand why. We believe that that's the playbook that they're using, right? Had we seen that in advance, we might have been able to address some of these issues. We also know that everything that they do at this point is really a litmus test for the next round. So we saw that happen when they cut the hairstyling and aesthetics program. They followed the rules and the timelines, particularly around the timelines in the policy, and that allowed for some real powerhouses in that program and within our union. Tara Ettinger at the time was our lead steward, and what she did to mobilize and get the community involved was nothing short of amazing. And so as a result of that, the Board of Governors pushed back that decision by 4 to 6 months, depending on the timeline you're using. And, 6 months later, we see this 37 program list come forward. In less than an hour's meeting, 37 programs were cut. And so that happened last January, so a year ago, January. And then throughout the remainder of the academic year, we saw many student supports disappear. We saw our AD program our academic assistance for adults with developmental disabilities just slated for closure. No discussion. It didn't have to go in front of the board. We worked tirelessly at the CSC table in the spring and summer of 2025. We did some good work, right? The process was somewhat followed in terms of individuals. And again, what we learned is that following the process for the college did not net them the outcome they were looking. So when we returned in the fall of 25, there were new players at the table and a new approach, one that was an absolute violation of the collective agreements, despite us bringing to the table examples of decisions throughout the system, very clear language in our collective agreement. Our college has taken the approach that you're gone. If your program closes, you're gone. They are not looking to rehome. They are not looking to meet with us in any sort of reasonable or meaningful way. And so we heard from faculty throughout the fall and more into the January start of the new semester. We're meeting with programs and saying things like, we have to start being mindful of our spending. So these are, programs like music industry arts who in the past have been well attended and good earners, and they were a vital resource in our community, right? And in fact, in previous years, they have actually contributed to other programs within the college. All of a sudden, we're hearing this program's in trouble. And within 2 months, a program goes from a chair mentioning, hey, we got to start mapping to we are now intake suspension and now we're on a list. And so to see another 30 programs in January was mind blowing. And so we began mobilizing and, asking the college to reconsider and connecting with Board of Governors and community partners, industry partners, emailing and doing all the things. When Minister Quinn's announcement came out, we were cautiously optimistic, right? We watched it live in our office and thought, okay, not that for 1 minute do I believe that Doug Ford in any way has any sort of political will towards any public service. But at the very least, at least, the pollsters are paying attention.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a firm believer that when we get loud, we are heard. When we stand together, we are strong. And so I thought, okay, we're starting to move that needle a little bit. So we immediately, as soon as that announcement was done, I emailed Claude Brulé, the president of our college, and said, look, in light of what's just happened, I'm asking you to press pause. At the very least, press pause until we have a true understanding of how much of that money is coming our way, what strings will be attached, how is this going to play out? And understanding that though we know that the money is earmarked for, STEM programs and very specific training opportunities, having that money in those programs opens up access to our financial resources for those other programs that perhaps aren't the, sexy big money makers, but they are the fabric of our community, right? Yeah. Not just in terms of the access that they provide for our students, but the services they provide in our community. Hairstyling is a perfect example. Within about a day, Claude responded back and said, absolutely. We are putting a pause on this until we have an understanding. Great. And then, without any further discussion, a faculty member reaches out to me the following Thursday and says, hey, listen, we just got this. If you look on my Algonquin, there's an emergency board meeting being called for the Monday evening of break week, and it was virtual only. I was like, what the actual is going on? People are like busy trying to we're in the middle of a semester. We're moving into break week. Students have checked out at this point. Now it's like Friday afternoon. So we very, very, very quickly kind of pivot, right? We go right back into mobilizing. And it is also in that announcement, what I've come to learn is the language we use, it has meaning and it has power. And this is the first time that we see Claude use the language of consolidated list. And so I read that and I thought, wait a minute, I think I get it. So when we reached out to Claude, we said, would you pause? Because if we look at those programs again in relation to the new funding, perhaps maybe not all 30 have to close, right? Like that was our thinking. But now, when we use language like this consolidated list, it tells us clearly the programs will not be looked at individually. They have made this decision and the list goes forward. So Monday evening comes, and the meeting lasts 40 some minutes. And each individual program was not even addressed. It was a consolidated list that they talked about. So that was incredibly deflating and disappointing, as you can imagine. But, if there's a silver lining or a ray of any kind of hope, it's that we have always said that we don't have to recruit our best people, our best mobilizers. We don't have to work to engage our membership at this point because the college is doing it for us, right? I shouldn't say that. We should always be working to mobilize and engage our membership. But for the first time since my involvement in the union, we have seen, our inboxes are flooded and our phones are blowing up and the traffic in our office is more so than we have ever seen. And you might think that's encouraging. It's actually so deflating because the college has been so disrespectful and so demeaning, and that people don't know where else to turn.
Are you at a stage where you're teaching out programs right now from the cuts previously, and then you've got this second wave?
Yeah, so we're not even through the first wave. So if we think about hairstyling and aesthetics, for example, that was a 2-year program, right?
Yeah.
And so we are just seeing the end of that 2-year program. Aesthetics, we finished last year. For any programs that were on the list last year that were a 1-year certificate, for example, that teach out occurred in the spring, summer, or end of winter, some spring, summer. So we dealt with that first tranche that was impacted. And then now we are just dealing with the 2-year teach out from the programs. And so in the middle of this, we now have 30 more programs cut. And so some of them are 1-year certificates. So we're going to get hit with that. In addition, what we are learning is our college has decided we have a very generic English course, and we have 1813 A through Z. And the fabulous thing about this course is that it's taught in every single program. So the foundation is there, but it is changed for the cohort in nursing and the cohort in the School of Business and the cohort in the trades, right? And so there's value in that, because when we talk about, writing in nursing looks very different than it does in a business program.
Yeah,
or in
this
the
is
trade.
our COM 110 program. So
Right.
for those that are listening, it's the same.
And so having worked with the incredible comms prof that teach that in nursing, particularly, so many times over the 20 years that I've been here, connecting with them and them saying, hey, can I sit in your lab? I need to understand what this assignment they're doing. Help me to understand what is the language that you use in your profession, right? The other value is they are taking this course with their cohorts, their peers. Well, now the college has recognized that if we have 20 faculty member teaching across, what if we had one generic basic comms that is a true gen ed that can be offered online, in class? It is assigned through the registrar's office. We can load up that classroom. So instead of 40 or 60 students, now we can put 300, and we've met our ministry requirements. So now you have the registrar trying to fit people in based on their different timetables. You are now in a large room full of students from across the college, away from your particular peers, and certainly nothing that is helping you learn how to chart effectively or how to write a business proposal, right?
And getting very little feedback.
Getting very little feedback, And so we suspect, so we know that is happening, that has now become public within our community. And we see that it is happening with our maths as well. And so that is faculty that will be affected, aside from the now 70 plus programs that we are trying to. So we know as of last year, we had lost 15% of our bargaining unit. I'm almost afraid, Julie, to check in with our data miners to ask what that number really truly looks like at this point. I looked at our seniority sheet, and it used to be 11 going into 12 pages, and now we're down to 9.5, 10. And that's not part-time, sessional, partial load, right? And the more that gets cut, the less opportunities there are to rehome faculty. I'm mindful that CSC is a confidential process. And so I certainly don't want to do anything to jeopardize those conversations. But what I can say is the college is taking a different approach than the approach we take last year. And when we ask, what is the rationale why? And the response is simply, this is the direction the college is taking. So we continue to go to the table. We continue to, at the beginning of every meeting, we raise our concerns every single time. For the record, we state we do not have the information we need to be making recommendations, to be participating in this committee. We want on the record that this approach violates Article 2, 27, 28, 6, throw a little 4 in depending. I like to get, spicy like Oprah up in here. Everybody gets an article to grieve. And the unfortunate thing is at this point, we continue to fight, we continue to press in. But in the back of my mind, I know that I'm really just building my grievance. And that is soul sucking.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are your members coping right now? What's the temperature like in your hallways? Ours tend to be empty.
Yeah, ours too. Ours too. It's like a ghost town. It's almost like people are afraid to even be seen, Hey, if they don't remember I'm here, maybe I'll be safe. And there's an apathy, right? Apathy was a big issue I think that we all were experiencing. And then now you add on a very tangible fear. People are terrified, Julie. People are terrified because we are now absolutely aware. Like, the optics don't even allow for the benefit of the doubt. You told us that you were going to walk through this season with dignity and integrity, caring, learning, respect. And they have made it clear that they are not. I've started introducing myself now as 63900. That's all I am. That is all I am to them. And so people are terrified. We see a mix. And sometimes it changes from day to day. Sometimes people are very angry and they come in, they're ready to fight. And in the next breath, they see the way they are treated, the way their notice is delivered, how little they're valued. And then they just want to see the place in their rearview mirror.
So let's bring this back to kind of the provincial scope. How does your stepping up as an alternate for the executive board play into some of this advocacy that is absolutely needed?
Yeah, that's a big question. I'm not sure I can answer that from a couple of lenses. Personally, I chose to step up for the board in this season because I've watched the board meeting and this infighting, not coming with solutions, but just looking to create more.
Yeah.
This infighting is getting us nowhere. And you know what? It's benefiting the employer. So while we're busy wasting our time and resources fighting each other, our employers and the Ford government are dismantling our public services, whether it's education, social services, LCBO. And we don't have our resources available because we're busy fighting, right? So I stepped up because I might not be the best or the smartest or the most informed. But I believe that if you're sitting at that table, you're there to work and you should have two drivers. Does it benefit members? Does it build power?
Okay. And if you have something that you want other CAAT A locals to understand about your fight, what would that be?
My fight is our fight, right? We are one of the bigger colleges, and yes, we've been hurt, but make no mistake, there's no college among us that hasn't been. If you're a college of 100 members and you lose 15 members, that's the same as what we've experienced, right? I look at my colleagues at Conestoga, 180 some notices. how do we manage this workload? But here's what I've learned, and here's what I would ask all of my colleagues to continue to do. We have come so far in terms of breaking down silos. We have the president's list. We have a lead steward list. And now, we have CESC groups and we have UMG groups. There is no need for us to continue to reinvent wheels at our own colleges. The colleges aren't doing that. They are getting their instructions from the CEC. And so I have found it very helpful to be able to reach out to other local presidents and say, hey, this is happening today in my college. Has anybody else seen this? Can you give me an example of what it looked like? How did you deal with it? And that helps in two ways, right? It gives me the information that I need in real time, but it also makes me feel a little bolstered, right? I know that I'm not the only person that is fighting this fight and it doesn't land on my shoulders.
Yeah.
We are doing this together. So the more we share information, the more we connect with each other, that is where our strength is, and that is where we will begin to fight, right? And I think we have to all be super aware of the fact we can no longer pretend that I would have said to you a year and a half ago, we have one of the better functioning CESCs. We have used it to mitigate Article 2s, and it has been a well-run committee. They don't exist anymore. So now we would be delusional if we think that anybody is coming to the table looking to rehome or save employment stability. So when we go to the table, we have to go informed with information. Here are some of the things and we have to know in our minds that we're building our grievances. That's how acrimonious it is at Algonquin. Our superpower in CAAT A is that we are find outologists. Our bent is to research and to dig and to learn. So that is how we do this together. Now, as union leadership, we have to recognize not everybody's going to be as pissed off as we are today. Not everybody is going to feel as strong or confident as we might today. So we have got to start engaging our communities. We have got to start making sure they understand this is what happened. And if, for some of us that, can get on the news every 5 minutes and start yelling, or are comfortable to grab a mic and stand in the street and start yelling, great. But for those of us that maybe aren't comfortable in getting loud in that way, there are so many other ways we can get loud, right? We can reach out, we can email and write and phone calls, and there are so many things. And people across this province have been so brilliant and creative, right? Our social media, listen, I won't for 1 minute take credit for any of that. We have an incredible social media person.
They do an excellent job. You're everywhere.
Right?
It's like, I feel like I've known you for the last year.
Chef's kiss. So that's what we need to do. The other thing we need to do, we need to go after the government in a very real and loud way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we voted him in this last time, but it can happen again.
The OSEP announcement has really ticked off the students. And once the students can't afford school, then we start to realize, well, the program that I wanted to go to isn't there now. So I think we're starting to see kind of a bit more of a snowball as well.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we all need to take the sobering reality check that when we cut off education, and that's exactly what's happening, our society, how long does it take to recover? So it is sobering. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have leadership, broad OPSEU leadership that is invested, that is on side, I guess is the best way to say that. When we look at the difference in the leadership styles from our previous president, the side deals with the government, side deals at the bargaining table, that kind of stuff, that got us nowhere. That got us here. That got us with freezes to tuition. It got us to the issue, it led to the crisis with the international students. We now have leadership that isn't hiding in a boardroom. They're on the street. They are engaged. They're available, either a text, an email, they're just out there. And when you have leadership in your union that the government says, get them out, they're not helping you. Man, as soon as I hear Doug Ford say, you don't want JP Hornick as your president, get them out. That's who I'm voting for. That's who I'm voting for.
So that is probably the most important thing for us to be addressing this convention is leadership. It's a 3-year term now.
3-year term. We don't have time for me to go into all of the reasons
Yeah.
why I support this current leadership. And there are vast. How they have handled the transition, how they have sought accountability, how they have made themselves transparent, how they have proven their accountability, how they show up on picket lines, how they show up any given day of the week. You'd be hard pressed to find them in their office because they're out pissing Doug Ford off. Aside from any of that, we need leadership that, again, benefits workers and builds worker power. We need a leader that is there to serve, not a leader that is there to build power for themselves.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Good luck with the fight. We have been fortunate so far, and I'm looking for wood to knock on because at St. Lawrence, things have gone fairly smoothly. Our CESC, tends to be working well, but that can always change. And that's something that we all need to be aware of.
This is the first time in the history of our CESC that we do not have an academic sitting on the college side. So we've historically had a dean, and this is the first time. We now have an accountant and the director of HR. That's our CESC. Deep breath in, and we storm through Wednesday.
All right, joining me now, we've got Christina Chrysler, our fantastic communications expert from Local 417, who's going to help demystify the entire process of the OPSEU SEFPO convention. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you.
What are you looking forward to, first of all? You're one of our representatives going to convention this year. You've been to convention before. What's the thing that you're most looking forward to this year?
Convention is a fascinating place. This year I'm going as an alternate, which means I'm only voting on anything should one of our delegates have to leave for some reason. But it's really important that we have a variety of representation there, like not just our delegates, that we have obviously our alternates and observers, which we do. We have a nice crew going this year, which is wonderful. So what I'm looking forward to, I would say, is it's just such an amazing process. We live in a bit of a silo because we operate in our CAAT world. OPSEU is huge and has a number of divisions and different people there. It's incredibly diverse, and it's always very humbling to be there because I am often reminded of how fortunate we truly are to be in CAAT. OPSEU is doing amazing things for all the groups, but the working conditions are very different across these. So we are talking about anywhere from healthcare and lab techs to the coroners are now part of our group, but then there's also corrections and like provincially. And, people who are working in group homes and mental health facilities and that kind of thing. So how children's aid, that kind of environment where working conditions can be physically very demanding and very, very high stress, and their challenges are much different than our own. And it is always fascinating to me to go think that I have an opinion formed on a particular topic or issue at hand, and then start hearing other people's perspectives. And sometimes that shifts a bit because it just opens my eyes to the realities that other people are facing in the province, and even within CAAT, actually. We're a relatively small a small college operating outside of the GTA. And when you start to hear some of the challenges that other institutions, even more northern colleges face in particular, it does just really change your perspective or help you understand why some of these things are so important.
We're talking about taking over the entire floor of the Metro Convention Center with delegates, and they're all voting on motions, and there are committee reports coming forward, and business actually gets done with so many diverse voices. It's pretty incredible to watch.
It is. I'm a Robert's Rules of Order geek. I mean, I love a good rule and I love to follow said rules. So when we're meeting in a group of, 10 or 15 people who all get along, or mostly get along anyways, we don't really get to see the true glory of Robert's Rules of Order. But when you're in a room with over 1,000 people, all with opinions and wanting to get things done, you can see exactly why that is important to have. And to watch it unfold is really quite interesting. And sometimes it can feel like it's bogging us down a bit, like you can get caught up in these side quests to sort that out, and that can be kind of tiring. but it all has a purpose, and it's to be fair and transparent and democratic, and it works. And so it's interesting to see lots of business takes place there. Like, so much gets hopefully done, some years more than others. This is a huge year because it's an election year. We may not get through as many issues as we would normally, just because that election's going to take up time. But anything that isn't resolved at convention, it doesn't just disappear. It goes to the newly elected executive board, and they then have the discussions and make decisions in the best interest. And we all have representation there as well through our divisions, our regions and divisions.
Good. And there's other committees that are there as well. We've talked about a couple of those committees earlier with Tabatha and Gillian, referring to some of the committees that they're part of. But what value does committee work kind of bring to the discussion?
It's invaluable as well. Because there are so many diverse voices, the more ways you have to capture that, the better. One group that I used to belong to that is important, particularly at conventions, is In Solidarity, which is a communications group that is made up of union members. We used to publish physical documents. Now everything's online through the OPSEU website. But during convention, this group of people who have been elected, they will report on everything as it's happening and summarize everything as it's happening. So even though you're not there, anyone in the province could go on to OPSEU's website and see the InSol updates. So we're incredibly inclusive, member-driven union, more so than many large unions. We are truly member-driven, and these groups are important. So we have the Young Workers, Coalition of Racialized Workers, also doing really important work to make sure voices are being heard, the Women's Committee, and then, there's a number of committees. So, and as well, there's caucuses as well. So they're not formal committees, but they're groups that also have a common goal or a common interest that meet to ensure that their voices are being heard. So all these people converge at one time. It is, like I say, very interesting, and that not everybody has to get along, and not everybody has to agree with each other, but we are all on the same team ultimately. And when we talk about solidarity, I know it can sound very cliche in a lot of ways. This is solidarity in action, though. Like, when you are there and you see such a diverse group of people all coming together, supporting each other and their workers and getting the voices put forward, it is something inspiring to be part of.
Why is it so important that the colleges have their voices heard at convention?
Well, I think, like everybody, we all have issues. Right now, we have a lot of issues. It's not a surprise. We have our funding concerns. We have our challenges and layoffs. So we need to push back against the government, who is our employer. It's not about pushing back at government for the sake of pushing back at government. The government is our employer, and that is who we need to push back at. They're the only people that can fix this problem, really. And so we need to come together, and not just Local 417. It is CAAT A, CAAT S, and then getting the support and the power of the other 150,000 people that are part of OPSEU. We are the largest public union in the province, I believe, and we need to leverage that power and do it for good, for the greater good. I mean, it is important that people, I guess, understand that union work, and of course, predominantly is about our working conditions, but it also trickles into the communities that we live in. Now more than ever, we need to be engaged with what is happening, not just in our own union, with other unions, because those things trickle into the private sector as well, and the quality of life that we all share.
Okay. And finally, Christina, we've had some fantastic communications coming out of our local, and it's going to continue as we head into convention as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, we'll see how this unfolds. I mean, we have lofty ambitions, you and I, so we'll see where we go. But Julie, I'm very glad to hear that you will be bringing your backpack microphone that you seem to pull out all the time. So we are hoping to speak with people not only from other CAAT locals, but other divisions, anyone really. Talk to them a bit about convention as well. We're going to try to go live. Members can actually see convention without the commitment of 3 days, but just so you get a feel, because it is really something to be in a space That's not a concert with that many people. So, I think it's important for people, the members, to be able to see and experience and understand what we are doing to represent them. So when we are elected, it isn't about, what I think is best per se. Myself, like anyone else who is on the LEC and anyone who is going to be voting as a delegate, it's not about a personal opinion. It's about what is going to serve our members the best. So, we're going to show a bit of what we're doing there and how we're representing you is the goal.
You've been listening to CAAT Tales, stories that matter to faculty and beyond. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit slcfaculty.ca and stay connected with us on social media.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or statements of OPSEU, SEFPO, St. Lawrence College, or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. While every effort is made to ensure accuracy, SLC Faculty Local 417 makes no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the information shared. Any reliance placed on such information is strictly at the listener's own risk. Music and sound effects used in this podcast are licensed or royalty-free. We respect copyright law and encourage our listeners do the same.